Hi everyone. I hope you enjoy that video, which gives a flavour of Ireland in 60 seconds. Thank you for joining us today for this Trinity Applicant webinar for people interested in the fellowship here at Trinity. My name's Helen Murray and I'm Communications Officer at the Global Brain Health Institute at Trinity College Dublin, and I'll be moderating today's session. So it's a very exciting time here. We welcomed our 10th cohort of fellows to Trinity this week. So there are now over 300 fellows in our community from all over the world and many different disciplines and backgrounds. So today is our third webinar for applicants to the Atlantic Fellows for Equity and Brain Health programme. Previous webinars provided an overview of the fellowship, which includes interviews with fellows. And there was also a session like today's with our sister fellowship site at UC San Francisco. So these webinars, the recordings are on the website at gbhi.org/apply. So make sure to check them out. There's also lots of great resources on that page, so it's worth taking a look. Another resource that might be of interest is our Fellows directory on the website, and there you can explore and learn more about our fellows and the types of people that are involved in our community. So the goals of today's session are to tell you a bit about the Global Brain Health Institute, or GBHI, at Trinity and the fellowship program here. You'll hear about program leadership, about what makes Trinity unique. We'll also share insights into the application process and consider tips and important information that we're looking for in applicants, and also how to complete the application. And finally, we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions and engage with program representatives. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A, and some of them might be answered in the course of the presentations, but we'll get to others later. Actually, if you could share the slide there, Ronan, so I can introduce today's speakers. So today's speakers I'll be the chair of the session moderating today. We will have Irasima Leroy and Mary Warbelow will be joining us. Next slide. Yeah, perfect. So Irasima is professor in geriatric psychiatry and site director here at GBHI at Trinity. And Mary plays a central role in the learning experience for fellows, as well as in coordinating the application process and so much more here at Trinity. So firstly, over to Irasima, who will tell us what makes the fellowship experience at Trinity so unique, as well exploring what we're looking for in potential applicants. She'll then hand over to Mary, who will look at the application process in detail. So Irasima, over to you.
Thanks very much, Helen. That's great. If I could just get my video on, let's have a look. Yes, it's now enabled. There we are. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning and good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's absolutely wonderful that you're all joining us, and we hope you'll find that this webinar is informative and will encourage you to apply to GBHI at Trinity. So as you've heard, my name is Irasima Leroy. I'm the site director here at the Trinity site. I am by profession a geriatric psychiatrist, so I'm a clinician. However, what's extremely important to know up front is that we have brain health experts and brain health leaders and potential leaders from all backgrounds. So clinicians, neuroscientists, but also people from other backgrounds, health economists, advocates, also people who are in the arts and creativities and so on. So just to reinforce the point that we believe that to address the issues of brain health globally, we need all disciplines and all perspectives to work together to deliver our mission and vision. So what makes GBHI at Trinity unique? I suppose the first thing is that we are situated here in Ireland. Ireland is a very unique and wonderful country. I've been here myself since 2019, and this is my home, my adopted home, and will be forevermore, I hope. Our program is situated within the university, Trinity College Dublin, so not within a specific department per se, because as I've mentioned, we are interdisciplinary and our faculty cross many schools. The School of Psychology, the School of Medicine, the School of Creative Arts, the School of Engineering, and also we interact with health policy and so on. And this is the way that we can address all these aspects of brain health. So really focusing on the social determinants of health, as you can see here, neuroscience, neurodegeneration, global health equity, and leadership development theory and health policy. And the goal of the program is to build well-rounded leaders in brain health within their own disciplines, but with a deep understanding across the interdisciplinary areas. Next slide, please. So what are some of the highlights? So first of all, this is a residential fellowship, and fellows will undertake a 12-month paid fellowship, either at Trinity College Dublin or the University of California, San Francisco, but this call is directed specifically for the Trinity College Dublin site. Previously, fellows had not made a choice as to where they went. They suggested a preference, but they could end up at either of the sites. Now, however, on the application form, one has to specify whether one wants Trinity or University of California, San Francisco. So the application process is slightly separate, and it's extremely important to be aware of that. So we start off the year with a core curriculum, covering various areas such as clinical dimensions of brain health, but also delving into arts and creativity as they relate to brain health, but also health economics and policy. Aligned with this, of course, is a lot of skills training for grant writing, for data analysis, and so on. We also connect with world-class researchers, clinicians, and policymakers. By connect, I mean that we have people from around the world who are leaders in their field, in the leaders in brain field from the respective disciplines, speaking with us in seminars or visits or fireside chats, for example, interacting and also acting as mentors for our fellows. And that brings me on to the point of mentoring. Each fellow is assigned a mentor for one-to-one mentoring on brain health projects. The mentors in-house are our faculty, and as I mentioned, they're across different disciplines. So we might have a mentor who is a clinician, such as myself, an academic geriatric psychiatrist, or your mentor might be a health economist, or they might be somebody, a professor of creative arts, or they might be a neuroscientist, for example. So the matching of the mentee to the mentor depends partly on the person's own background and profession, but also sometimes it's about the region they're from, or it can also depend on the match and the needs of the person. We also participate in clinical cases for practical insights. However, again, to stress that this is not a clinical training program. This is a brain health leadership training program, and clinicians are part of that, but not everybody is a clinician. Next slide, please. Every fellow is invited to apply for funds for pilot projects. Now, this happens at the very end of the year. The pilot proposal applications are due in July. And from Christmas onwards, fellows are encouraged and supported through the skills sessions to write their pilot project. So they may come to the program with ideas about what they might want to do, but of course, ideally, if they're engaging with the program well, their thoughts and their ideas will develop and expand and may end up where they started. But the point is to think very deeply about a kind of pilot project that a fellow will do once they leave the program. So if funded, and it is a competitive program, if funded, they will take away a small amount of startup money back to their home place to implement the pilot project. And the whole goal is to give that person a head start to go back into the area that they came from, but at a higher level from when they left. And of course, being a pilot project, the idea is that it will scale up and lead to a greater trajectory in the future through funding, through greater investment, or whatever the person's discipline may be. So all the fellows will benefit from a common program structure with unique site expertise. So you may be wondering what's the difference between Trinity and the University of California, San Francisco. So the core program is the same across both sites. However, there are some unique differences. For one thing, in Trinity, we are situated within a university across multiple departments, which means we are by nature slightly more interdisciplinary, and that is a core element of how we function because we interact with departments, centers, and divisions and disciplines across the university and also beyond the university. Our hospital partners for a session that's called the Clinical and Lived Experience includes hospital partners around Dublin, but also places where people with brain health challenges may live, for example, day centres, long-term care centres, and so on. In contrast, at University of California, San Francisco, the program tends to be more focused on a single department, which is the MAC Center, the Memory and Aging Center. So the expertise is slightly more along the lines of specific dementia training. And that brings me to a very important point. Much of the focus is about neurodegeneration and dementia, but critically, our definition of brain health is to address the life course. So we welcome people who are looking at brain health from different perspectives, not just dementia and neurodegeneration. Different perspectives can mean brain health in young people, for example. It could be mental health in older people, and so on. So please keep that in mind. Because we started many years ago as having quite a dementia focus, we have expanded to include a life course of brain health currently. The next point is about leadership skills, and that's a core element of what we're doing. What we hope is to develop future brain leaders, and when people leave the program, that they already are brain health leaders, to work globally. And we do this in various ways, partly through modeling and mentorship, partly through fellows having experiences in leadership within their areas around brain health, but also through a dedicated program in which we have a residential retreat week that's early on in the program. It's around about November time, where we all go away for a week and we think deeply about leadership issues. And then throughout the rest of the year, through small groups and through leadership skills training, we develop leadership skills and elements of fellows practice. Finally, this is a certificate, a university certificate accredited program, and people will leave with a certificate in equity in brain health. And the last point on the slide, one of the critical, if not for me, the most critical element of the program is becoming part of a global community of Atlantic Fellows. In other words, people come and do their first year at the Global Brain Health Institute, either in Trinity or in UCSF, but that's only the start. Once you finish the program for the year, you then become an Atlantic Fellow in Brain Health, and you join the 300 plus people who have already graduated through the program, and you are an Atlantic Fellow for life. So this becomes your tribe, so to speak, so your global community in which you interact. And very quickly, the graduating fellows come to know and to interact with the fellows from the other cohorts, and we see cross-cohort collaboration, particularly as they go back to their countries. And we're seeing this more and more as the cohorts are developing critical mass within key regions. So you may be the person from your region who's the graduate from 2026, but when you finish the program, you'll be joining a community of 5, 6, 7 others in your region who have graduated from previous years. And your community from your region will interact with a community from a different region, again, from graduates of the Global Brain Health Program from different years. I'll also add here that we go beyond brain health. GBHI, Global Brain Health Institute, is one of 7 programs supported by the Atlantic Institute. There are 2 health programs within that program, and I'd encourage you to look this up online so that if you do get to interview, you're well versed in knowing the structure of where we sit. We have the Global Brain Health Institute program here in Dublin and San Francisco, but there is also a health program in Southeast Asia. The other programs address race equity and social equity in different parts of the world. So we're one of 7 equity programs for the Atlantic Fellows, supervised and overseen by the Atlantic Institute. An absolutely critical aspect of the program is that it's what we call a values-based program. So top of the list there is this idea of equity for brain health globally. And as I mentioned, when people graduate, they become Atlantic Fellows for Equity in Brain Health. But there are also underpinning values which inform all the work that we do. And we call it this acronym called A-Force. And by the time that the fellows have finished the program, they will hopefully, and we do believe that this happens, they will be manifesting these values throughout their work. So it stands for authenticity, fairness, openness, respect, courage, and empathy. So you can imagine, to be an effective and respected leader in global brain health, you need to have a values-based and be true to all these values. Next slide, please. So why Trinity? So as I mentioned, I've been in Dublin at Trinity since 2019, and I've been extremely happy here. I've made this my home. It's a friendly, safe environment. Now that's the university, but I would say Dublin as well. Dublin is a small city. The country is small, with just over 5 million as a population, which I realize for some of you coming from very countries with large populations, this may not even represent a city. But that gives a sense of intimacy and a sense of belonging very quickly. People are extremely friendly and open. Any trouble that you have, you can stop somebody in the street. They'll give you instructions, particularly the police. They're not very threatening at all, as far as I'm concerned. They're there to give people directions. It is English speaking, which I think is a big advantage. And of course, we encourage our applicants to be English speaking. We don't want to exclude people who are not English speaking, but we have to be clear that the program is delivered in English, and it can be challenging if English is not a comfortable working language for you. Trinity College Dublin specifically has a very long tradition in academic excellence, dating back to 1592. And this is one of what we call the great universities of the United Kingdom and Ireland. So it's of the tradition of Cambridge and Oxford, which are our partners. And it is one of the most prestigious university in Ireland, with deep, long traditions, which for those of you who will come here, you will see very quickly. At the same time, having long traditions, it's also a place of innovation and creativity. And I think by hosting GBHI, which in itself is a magnificently innovative and creative program, thinking deeply about interdisciplinarity and new ways to address brain health, I think that's a testament to what the university has to offer. So a few stats on the bottom here. You can read those for yourself. I'll just run through them. Ireland is the second safest country in the world. Ireland has the 11th highest quality of life in the world, the 7th most competitive economy, and Trinity is Ireland's leading university. And the last statistic here, Trinity has more than 500 industry partners, including Meta, Google, IBM, Pfizer, and more. And the Google headquarters are just down the road from us here. And next slide, please. So we believe that coming to Trinity would offer a unique, innovative, and life-changing experience. And I can say that without hesitation, there hasn't been a single fellow that has left GBHI Trinity without saying it has been a life-changing experience. So thank you very much. I think I'm going to hand it over now to my colleagues to carry on. And for those of you who want to know more about Trinity, the website is there. Look on YouTube, look us up, and address any questions you may have. Okay. Now, there are a few points here I can just continue. I think I've touched on most of them already. Just to be sure that people are absolutely clear what our focus is, I'll reiterate a few. The first is that we address a life course in brain health, again, stressing that we are not just a dementia program, although dementia is a key, and neurodegeneration is a key element of what we present. The second point, which I've not yet mentioned, which is core to the way we function, is this idea of PPI, or patient and public involvement, also known as PPV, patient and public voice, or the lived experience. In other words, this is ensuring that the person with the lived experience of a brain health challenge, whether it's dementia, a traumatic brain injury, whether it's as a carer, and so on, is core to driving and supporting our work. In other words, everything that we do is not for people with brain health challenges, but it's working with people with brain health challenges in order to deliver on the mission and vision of GBHI. I've already mentioned the faculty cross-cuts multiple disciplines, and all of our faculty have international track records in teaching and training and research, and they include people from psychology, medicine, nursing, engineering, and creative arts. And our collaborator ecosystem is the hospital. I myself work at St. James's Hospital, which is about a 35-minute walk from here, or a 10-minute bus ride. But other hospitals, partner hospitals with Trinity, include Tallaght University Hospital and others. We work with NGOs, community and cultural organizations to enrich learning and collaboration with fellows, for fellows. And these could be arts organizations such as our museums within Dublin, but also various organizations such as Respond, which is Ireland's largest housing provider for social housing. So there's a range of different opportunities and interlinks between organizations outside of Trinity as well. Next slide, please. I have mentioned the word interdisciplinarity a few times, and again, this is something that may not necessarily be that familiar to some people who have come from their own discipline and stayed within their own discipline throughout. So this is an opportunity to start interacting with other fellows from different disciplines. And interacting with other disciplines is not only an interesting and wonderful challenge to expand one's understanding and approach to brain health, but that diversity extends also to working with people from other backgrounds, other cultures, also different stages of careers. So we have some people who have already had a very full career and are in the mature stage of their careers, others much earlier. And it's that intermingling and that intermix that allows the magic to happen. The learning experiences are diverse. We have flipped classroom sessions, obviously recognizing that our fellows are mature learners, but we also do clinical rotations, as I've mentioned, to arts, drama, design thinking workshops, and a lot of interactive work, and sometimes pushing people out of their comfort zone. So if we, for example, have somebody who's used to working in a lab or working with data sets, they might find themselves doing something in the art space in a group setting. And this may be a little bit unusual and uncomfortable, but ultimately people find that it stretches them and enhances the work that they do. I've already mentioned the leadership arc. I've mentioned our retreat, leadership retreat, which happens in November. But later on in the year, usually around about May, we have what's called Creative Brain Week, where we have leadership in arts for health. So we have artists with brain health foci or scientists, clinicians and others interested in brain health with an artistic focus coming together to think about how to celebrate and manifest and explore aspects of brain health with the arts as a focus. And finally, we're very intentional about figuring out how to practice interdisciplinary research and advocacy, again, rooted in equity to advance life course brain health. Next slide, please. So I think we've touched on most of these, and we're keen to leave lots of time for questions. I've talked about mentorship. Again, if people have questions, we can address those. I've talked about leadership, innovative research, and collaboration and equity. So I think we'll go on to the next slide, but please, if you have any questions, jot them down. Throughout the year, we like to think of this, and again, this is the fellowship journey, which the first year is only the beginning. And this is divided into various periods throughout the year. The fellows arrive, they make contact with their mentors, they begin to develop a training plan. Next, they move into a stage where they start to build knowledge, they hone their skills, they start collaborating with their peers. And this is usually an incredibly exciting time when you're discovering new ideas, meeting new people, finding alliances and alignments with people who may be from completely different parts of the world, and recognizing how much you have in common, all the things that are very different and enriching. And then gradually, we see the leaders start to evolve as knowledge expands, opportunities are identified, and ideas are shared. And during this period, sometimes it can be very challenging because sometimes there are too many opportunities for people to choose from. And eventually, when they start thinking about developing their pilot project, they've got to hone down from all the things that they've thought about, discovered, got excited about, to recognize that there's only so much an individual can do and what's meaningful to take forward to foster their work going forward as they think about the next stage in their career. I'll just point out, oops, excuse me, just go back for 1 second there. Yeah, just pointing out the third word down there, accompanying. Now, I think that's an important word. Accompanying means that your mentor and the faculty and staff of GBHI walk the journey alongside you, not in front of you, not behind you. You're not being pushed, you're not being pulled. They walk alongside you to support and mentor you through your fellowship year and beyond. And this could take the form of supporting grant writing, for example, sharing ideas about new projects or research that you might do, being a sounding board for your work, being a mentor, but also perhaps taking on a supervisory role. So in other words, we're going along this journey together. And your reason for coming on the fellowship is because you'll be seeking that kind of support at a critical stage in your career. Next slide, please. So I already mentioned that we have a community of 300 plus fellows, and they come from 66 countries. So I hope that everybody on the call can recognize their country as one of these dots. And you can see that some areas have greater representation of fellows compared to others. On the one hand, we're keen to expand those areas because that creates a critical mass, and we're absolutely committed to the idea of networks and people working together across cohorts and across disciplines to make change happen. Change doesn't happen with a single individual working alone in a silo in a single discipline. Having said that, we're also extremely keen to develop areas that are less developed, because again, having a single person in a single country working alone is very challenging. So if there are people in your area, in your region, we'll strongly encourage you to look them up, connect them before you do application. Certainly if you're selected for interview, make sure you know who's in your region. Take the time to reach out to them, email them, get on a call with them, and find out what it is they're looking for in a peer who might be joining them in a year's time. Next slide, please. And this really stresses the idea of the power of the network. Again, an individual working by themselves without support in a single discipline will achieve much less than someone working collaboratively across a network in a region, but also regions working together. So the problems you may be facing with brain health in Kenya may be very similar to the problems you'll be facing in Brazil. And that's the key thing, is to discover the world outside of your own area. Okay, so I think now I'm passing it over. Is that correct? Applicant profile eligibility. That's still me. I can continue. Okay. Yep. Okay, I've just gotten a nod. Okay, it's still me. You'll be hearing from other members of the team in a moment. So who are we looking at in terms of the ideal fellow? First of all, there is no ideal fellow. It's a set of individuals all working together to work towards a common mission and vision. However, there are some fellows who will be more successful than others because they fit a profile that is suited to our program. And one of the key things is that you're at the right stage of career. Now, the right stage of career is very individual. For somebody, that could be at the age of 60, where they're ending a career and starting a new career, and they need to have the uplift and the training and understanding of brain health as they shift their huge expertise and experience from their first career into a new career. For somebody else, it might be at a much earlier stage in their career, maybe entering mid-career, where they need to be thinking expanding their boundaries beyond their own individual lab, beyond the work that's gotten to them to that point. So it's an extremely individual issue as to what is the right time for a person. But if the time is right, then that's a key element for ensuring success in the program. Another key element of the program is to come with an open mind. So one of our principles, one of our values is openness. Openness means that you're open to new ideas, to new experiences, to new ways of doing things, to new cultures, ideas, ways of language, and so on. It's to break out of what you're doing. If you're going to stay doing what you're doing, then there's no need to come. And that really stresses this idea that we engage across disciplines. So you might find yourself as a neuroscientist talking to somebody who's a filmmaker, or you might be a psychiatrist talking to a neuroscientist or a health economist, and so on. And this is to break down these traditional barriers, these traditional disciplinary silos, because that's ultimately the meaning of meaningful interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary work. And when we think about the challenges to brain health, some have likened this to one of the world's wicked problems, like climate change, for example. We cannot solve that issue, or we cannot even begin to address that issue with only a narrow lens. And the other point is we're extremely committed to resolving issues around inequities in brain health. So equity is a key focus. We're very interested in supporting vulnerable populations and thinking about how brain health challenges may differ between and across different communities, particularly with particular challenges. Next slide, please. So it is critical that someone who applies and is given an offer is available to complete the 12 months of the education in residence full-time at one of the sites, either Trinity or University of California, San Francisco. I've already mentioned the issue about English. We are certainly open to people who, and most of our fellows don't have English as a first language. However, they do really need a working knowledge of English. Otherwise, they will find the program very challenging. And we don't want them to spend their year worrying about language learning as opposed to engaging with the content of the program. The ability to travel internationally is important. Now, always there are individual cases where visa restrictions might be complicated, but there are also health barriers that sometimes can come in here. So it is important to recognize that if people come to the program, they need to be able to travel internationally, not only to Ireland, but also to San Francisco, if necessary. But every year, and we haven't really mentioned this yet, but every year we have a week in which we have our annual meeting, which is in combination with the fellows at University of California, San Francisco, and that will be in some place in the world other than the US or Dublin. And that's in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Association AAIC regional meeting. Next slide, please. A very important point is that fellows or potential applicants have regional support and mentorship in communities where they hope to make an impact. And I've made the point about a single person in a place where there is no support and they might be working in isolation. It's the rare person who can make that work. Not to say that it doesn't happen, it can be successful, but generally speaking, we look for people who are supported by their sending institutions or their sending organizations or who have some kind of infrastructure back home to which they will return. We're not interested in recruiting people who intend to leave their countries and stay in Ireland and in California. We're interested in people who want to make a meaningful impact in the place that they come from. We'll ask that people outline in the application who their regional mentors will be, and this is usually a senior person in their field or in their region who supports them and will help them return back to continue the work in their new leadership role when they come back to their place of origin. And I think here the word is help the person be transformative, because that's the key thing. So we're interested in helping people become change makers. And most people are accepted into the program because they already are change makers or they've already demonstrated potential to be a change maker. Next slide, please. In terms of education and training required. Whoops. Just a minute here. We'll just wait for the slide to correct. So while this is flicking, I'll just tell you that there is no absolute degree requirement for our fellows. Just flip one back. Yes, here we go. So we have had people with PhDs and multiple PhDs, and we've had people with no university degrees. Now that's the exception, and people tend to come from diverse backgrounds, particularly the arts background, so they might have a portfolio, for example, of very highly developed artistic work. But the point is that there is flexibility in that. And as you can see here, we've got a range of different professionals, which are the point I've made already, which is about artists or other creative professionals. We are interested in looking at their portfolio. They're interested in improving the lives of people with dementia and their care partners or people with other brain health challenges, and a public platform to showcase their portfolio. With physicians, these are people who have completed their medical degree and residency and other fellowship specialties. We are not interested in people who are mid-training at whichever point they are at. So if you're middle of a medical degree, the answer is no. Middle of a residency or a fellowship, no. You need to have completed whatever stage of training you're at. And you have to have a deep interest in improving clinical practice in the context of brain health. With researchers, generally speaking, we expect people to have completed a PhD and postdoctoral training. Now, again, this isn't an absolute. We have people across a range of different qualifications, but typically speaking, researchers will have a PhD. And again, a deep interest in generating and distributing knowledge to advance the field of brain health and dementia prevention, or addressing brain health challenges. And finally, people who do not come from the university or the clinical sphere, innovators, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and other professionals. These are people who have developed a track record of achievement, are in the space, and are keen to look for a means to take them to the next level of their career within brain health. Next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Mary, and then we'll leave some time for questions. Mary, over to you.
Thank you, Ira, and thanks all for joining our call. My name is Mary Warbelow. As Helen stated at the beginning of the call, I'm the Learning Experience Administrative Officer, and I also support the selection process at GBHI Trinity. I'm going to speak to you for the next few minutes about the application process, including key dates, components of the application, and some process tips. So we'll start with key dates. Oh, excuse me. We'll start with key dates. So to note, the application deadline is September 19th at 5 p.m. Irish Standard Time. At this point, the application will move into the review process where decisions are made to progress or not progress a candidate to the interview stage. All candidates will be notified by a member of the selection committee, and those who are successful to interview will do so in November. Final decisions where the applicant will be offered a fellowship place will happen in mid to late December. And again, all candidates will be notified by a member of the selection committee, regardless of the outcome. And then to note that the program is set to start in late August 2026. There are a couple of major components that happen within our application. So the GBHI applications are submitted via an online platform, and there are some key points within the application. These need to be included for your application to be considered complete and to go forward for review. So to start with your personal information, there are things like your name, your contact information, your email, and your region of the world that you're residing in. We're also looking for education and professional history, but this refers to relevant experience to this fellowship. Also the statement of purpose, which I'll speak to in more detail in just a moment, and your resume or your curriculum vitae. The second part of the application is your 2 letters of support. Just to double check that you ensure consistent language on the application. So your 2 letters of support I'll go into in just a moment as well. In addition to these, just to state that the letters of support are also due by the deadline of the 19th of September. You can apply for the fellowship at gbhi.org/apply. You'll find that on our website. And the online application. So when you first create an account, you'll have a prompt here to confirm the instructions. So we advise that you read through and understand the procedure before starting your application. You complete the online application, and one of the key elements here is to select your host institution. So you can select Trinity College Dublin or the University of California, San Francisco, but you must select one or the other. And you'll also upload your resume and CV. Would really recommend that you read through carefully and make sure that all fields are completed, including selecting the host institution, your CV as I stated, but also to just double check that all spellings and information is correct. If anything is left incomplete, the application won't be eligible to move forward for review. For the online application, you have the statements of purpose. This is 5 questions where we're asking you to describe, identify, and detail your relevant experience in the field of brain health. So here's where you get to show the selection committee why you are the ideal candidate for GBHI. And each response should be between 75 and 100 words. We're looking for candidates who clearly articulate their experiences as well as their future plans. So the questions include: describe your professional interest in the area of brain health, describe your experience working on issues related to brain health equity and how you have shown leadership, what excites you about joining a lifelong fellowship and community of brain health leaders. Describe an ambitious yet feasible project that you would like to lead. That's a 5-year goal or plan. And identify relevant individuals, organizations, or institutions in your home region. So Ira spoke to this in terms of we're looking for candidates who are interested in making an impact in their regions of the world. And a little bit more about the letters of support. So these references should speak about why you are a strong candidate. They should be detailed and highlight you and your work. Letters that confirm employment are not what we're looking for. We're looking for references that can really speak to the work that you have done in the field of brain health. So choose your references carefully. I'll go through a little bit of a process for that, but just to go over the requirements again, you need 2 letters of support. At least one should be from a current employer, institution, organization, or group, the applicant that you have engaged with. Applicants should request the letters of support from their letter writers early. So again, these are due at the same time the application is submitted, by the 19th of September. And just to remember that it is important to get those in before the deadline. So a little bit more information about your supporting, your letter writers to get these letters in for you. So applicants should contact their letter writers early. They should make sure that their letter writers or the references know that they have identified them and that they will receive an email with a link. They can submit those letters anytime before the online deadline. Make sure that the addresses for the email addresses for your letters writers are correct. It's very difficult if we have an incorrect email address, one dot is out of place, that they won't receive those, and that the reference writers understand the guidelines that we're looking for on the GBHI website. So once you've submitted your application, your reference writers that you've identified will be sent an email detailing the process for supporting you and submitting that reference letter through a link. The letter writers submit their letters that'll go directly into your application and then will be reviewed as part of your application review. And a few application process tips. So applications will be considered incomplete unless all required materials have been submitted by the deadline. That means your application will not move forward review. You may only submit 1 application per applicant cycle. So that means that during the application process, you will need to choose either Trinity or UCSF. You will not be able to apply for both. If this happens, we will contact you. You will have to make a decision, but only 1 application will move forward. We advise against using mobile phones to complete the application. It's because the application is designed on an online platform for computers. So you'll have the best ability to see all of the fields that need to be filled out and ensure that everything is done correctly on a computer as opposed to a phone. And do check your outdated versions of iOS, Android, and that can have issues with the form. And make sure you save your progress. So you can check Save My Progress and resume later at any time. You can do this at the top of the application. You do this and you can go back into the application by using your email and password. You can go into the application as much as you'd like before the deadline of 19th of September. Some additional tips is to consider writing your statements of purpose in a separate document and then transferring them into the application. That way you can ensure that the grammar, the English, everything that you would like to write into those statements of purpose is accurate and represented the way you would like it. Another note, as Ira said before, applications must be submitted in English. This is a global program, but we do work through English. And one additional note for French citizens, for those who wish to be considered for the French Foundation Alzheimer's Atlantic Fellowship Partnership, there is a specific question that will appear. Once you select that, you'll be entered into that country of citizenship eligibility. So a little bit about selection criteria and process. So Ira, I don't know if you'd also like to join me in this. These are some key points about what makes a great candidate. And it might be great to hear from our site director on the personal mission, aligning and vision.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks very much, Mary. So a key thing with GBHI is building this network, and we're all facing the same direction, moving towards the same mission and vision, which is addressing threats to brain health globally. So that's a huge and wonderful idea. And for those of you who know a little bit of the history of GBHI, you'll know that that was the vision of our funder when we started more than 10 years ago. In fact, we didn't say that, did we, Mary, that we're coming into our 10th cohort now. So it's very important that for people who apply that they are aware of this and that they shape their application to demonstrate in their work how they are aligned with this mission and vision, because if it's not, then this is not the program for you. We're looking for somebody who themselves is visionary, has ambitious ideas, but also a feasible plan to put them into action. So if you come and tell us you want to change the world, but not how, or the way you want to do it is not realistic within what you're able to do in your discipline and your time course, then that won't support you. We're interested in people who are, just go back, because I think we just touched on an important point, people who want to make, or who are in a position to make an impact in the community. And again, we've mentioned the word transformative once or twice, and again, I'll say it again, the potential for transformative leadership. If you've already been transformative and you're at the peak of your career, then perhaps we don't have anything to offer you. But if you have that potential and you're passionate about brain health and your own mission and vision is aligned with ours, then perhaps this is the program for you. And again, I don't think we've mentioned this before, but the spirit of collaboration. We've talked about interdisciplinarity, working across disciplines, working with people who are different from different backgrounds, all again towards the same goal, but it's having that spirit of collaboration and managing the tension around that, because that's not easy work. That can be challenging. And so that's a critical piece. And finally, a specific plan for the the 5 years post the fellowship, because that will come up in those of you who make it to interview. In other words, what is your future plan? Where do you see life going? Where do you see your trajectory following the fellowship? And that's where people can sometimes fall down because they're so focused only on the fellowship itself. Thanks, Mary. Mary, I'll hand this over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to reiterate our key dates for interview and selection. So our interview notifications will go out just before November of 2025. So after the review process by members of faculty, all candidates will be notified by a member of the selection committee. Those who are successful to interview will interview in November, with final decisions being made in December. And just some key takeaways. So tips for a successful application is to start early. Like I said, you can always go back into your application. You'll have an account. You can take your time for your statement of purpose, letting your reference writers know. But it's really important to detail the purpose of your application. So as Ira stated many times, we're looking for people who are active and relevant in the field of brain health, and to really detail and showcase your project and your work. I think it would be great, Ira, if you also talked about the last 3 points, emphasizing your commitment, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mary. So commitment to the program, meaning you're giving up a year of your life to come over to Ireland and relocate, sometimes people bring their families. So that's a commitment in the short term, but commitment in the longer term that you dedicate your career to brain health. Now, obviously people's lives change, but the goal here is that this is just the starting point. The program is the first step on a lifelong career path that is towards the mission and vision of addressing threats to brain health globally. So really emphasize that and demonstrate what you've done that reinforces this commitment. Highlight in your application experience that you've had that aligns with our values, our mission and vision. So in other words, do your research carefully. There's lots of information about GBHI out there. Talk to the fellows in your region. Everybody's happy to communicate and connect and find out whether you're a good fit for the program. And if you find that this is aligning with what you want to do, with what you have been doing, with your future vision, and you get excited by it, then you're a good applicant. And secondly, thirdly, the last point is carefully consider your host institution. So you do need to apply either to Trinity or to UCSF. And we've highlighted a few differences. But again, one institution may be better for some people compared to the other. So think carefully about what it is you do and what the different institutions offer. And we've given you some idea of that. And it's not only the institution, but it's also the country, the culture, where you want to be in the world, even practical things like the time difference between the country and your home, so that you're not making phone calls in the middle of the night. So all of these things need to be considered. And of course, you'll be welcome at both places.
Okay. Thank you so much, Irisima and Mary, and we can switch off the presentation slides there now. So we're running a little bit long. We've had so much to say, but we have been getting a lot of questions in, and our colleague Owen has been answering a lot directly. Just to let you know afterwards, if we don't get to some questions, please do email us. I've just put that in the chat, hopefully to everyone, so you can get us at gbhapply@tcd.ie. But I'm just going to hopefully be able to spend about 10 minutes. Sorry, we're going to just run a little over to flag a few questions with Irisima and Mary. With a few people wondering, is there a stipend, and can they travel with family? How does that work?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. We do offer a salary. It's in line with Ireland's regulations for a postdoc position. If anybody would like to see the current rate, email gbhiapply@tcd.ie, and I can make sure we get a link to you on that. It is subject to change based on year. And yes, we have many fellows who travel with their families. Unfortunately, we don't have extra support for families, but that is something that we can certainly help you connect with past fellows, and they can talk to you about their experiences. But yes, we have many people who do relocate with their families, their children, their partners, and set up again in Ireland.
Great.
Mary, I just might add to that quickly. When looking at the salary scales, please be aware that you understand the cost of living in Ireland, the cost of housing, and the cost of childcare. All of that's readily available on the internet. So do your research to ensure that this is the right fit for you.
Great, thanks. We have a few people inquiring about what happens after the fellowship year. How do we connect with an alumni? How does that work?
Should I address that? So how do we
That would
connect
be great.
with alumni? So I think it's a critical question, and it's absolutely the core of what GBHI is. GBHI as the program is the starting point. And I've said that a few times, and I really want to reiterate that this is a lifelong journey. So the alumni experience is absolutely critical. So fellows finish the year and they transfer to become Atlantic Fellows for Equity in Brain Health. And they are then intentionally connected with their peers from other cohorts, again, 300 plus people at this stage, through the alumni committee work. And we have a dedicated person both on the Trinity side and the UCSF side to support that work. And that could be through various ongoing educational and leadership focused activities online, and so on. We also cross paths as a community in various stages across the year. For example, large conferences like Alzheimer's Disease International, Alzheimer's Europe, the AIC conference, and so on. So there's various touch points whereby our community comes together opportunistically and sometimes intentionally. So that's within our GBHI family, so to speak. But if you remember, I also mentioned that we're one of 7 programs, and by becoming an alumnus, an Atlantic Fellow, you become one of the much larger community of people who are Atlantic Fellows from all the other programs. So the fellowships, Atlantic Fellows for Brain Health, for Social Equity, the Atlantic Fellows for Race Equity and Health Equity around the world. So you become one of 7 fellows. And increasingly, as we moving forward in our program, we're extremely keen that our alumni interact not only within their own program cohort, GBHI, but also across the programs as well. And extremely rich community.
Right. And people are interested in learning, how many fellows are selected each year. I mean, is it a very competitive program, or how does it work? Is there a set number?
Mary, do you want to address that one maybe? Okay, yes. Well, I'll start and you jump in. So yes, it is competitive. We want to have the right selection of people. And brain health is becoming more and more on the radar, and more people are interested. So we do have lots of applicants, and that's why it's extremely important to think very intentionally about your application and how you are a good fit for the program, and convince us of that. So that's the first point. The second point is, I'll leave the numbers to Mary. But our class size is generally from, say, 15 to 20 people. We have quite a big incoming class right now. And that's for the Trinity site only. That's matched on the UCSF side. And ultimately, it is one single cohort. Mary?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that. I couldn't unmute myself there for a moment. Yeah, so generally speaking, we take about 12 to 20% of applicants who apply. But again, that does vary depending on the year. Most importantly for us is a cohesive cohort. So we're looking for the right candidates at the right time. But like Ira said, it could be anywhere from 15 to 20 on average. That's about right. In terms of competitiveness, it is quite a competitive application process, and each year we find the candidates are exceeding our expectations. So there is a lot of competition, but I think that through the process and detailing your answers, we'll be able to find the right candidates.
Great. And just a few questions back to sort of more logistical and practical questions, which are obviously very important when you're relocating potentially halfway across the world. With regard to housing, is there housing provided, or does the Global Brain Health Institute assist, or how does that work?
When a candidate first arrives, there is some assistance. So I'm so sorry if it's a week or 2 weeks. I can't remember at the moment. Maybe my colleague Ronan can type it in the chat. But there is some assistance when you first arrive to help you land in Ireland. But it is the candidate or the fellow's responsibility then to find their own housing. So we do support them when they first arrive. Sorry, it's 1 week of support, and then we'll do our best to help them find the housing. Yeah, but that would, like Ira said, you should do your research to know what you're landing into in Dublin.
Yeah, and I think a thing that we've learned this year as well is that the fellows connect. The last year's cohort have connected with the incoming cohort, and they're sort of linking accommodation, because it is a bit of a challenge, but we haven't had anyone be homeless, so that there is accommodation. It can be challenging, but it's there are ways to secure it. Great, and we have a few questions now about letters of recommendation. Firstly, if an applicant, their letter writer isn't sending the letter, can the applicant send it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've had many, we've had some issues. Of course, there's always issues with emails. If you're having an issue where your letter writer hasn't received a link, reach out to that GBHI apply at tcd.ie. That'll go directly to me, and I can support to make sure the link is sent to your reference writer. Whether I send it or I send it to you to send on, we've always been able to get the link to the reference writer. So absolutely. And I would also recommend them checking their spam folders or just being aware that it's coming in, but we will make sure that they get it.
Perfect. And does the prospective fellow get a notification when their letter writers have submitted?
Yes, they should do an automatic response. Sorry about that, Helen. Yeah, that's right. So you should get an automated message when they've received it, and also once it's been submitted.
Okay, perfect. And I see that it's coming up to 5 past the hour now. Maybe just one final one on the projects. So people were inquiring about the pilot projects, and do people come with the projects in mind? What if they sort of change their mind once they're in the process and experiencing GBHI? Some ideas on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the application may ask you if you've got some project ideas, and that's really to scope out whether you're in the right space and whether you have the ability to think about a project or a research question in a feasible way. But of course, you're not bound to that. So don't lose too much sleep over it. And if you don't change or modify your project idea, then chances are you're not engaging fully with the program. Because if we're doing our job, you'll be exposed to all kinds of ideas, thoughts, innovations, experiences that you will not have had before, and that will necessarily influence what you intend to do. Now, it may come back to what you started with, but you'll be much more informed and enriched in terms of your plans going forward.
Okay, great. So I think we'll let that be the final question that we'll answer today. As I mentioned, do feel free to get in touch if things haven't been answered, either in the chat or in the session. The website is a really good resource, so make sure to take a look there. And there's also an FAQ section. You can also, if you go to gbhi.org/Trinity, there's a specific Trinity section, which you'll be able to find out a bit more about fellows who have been here. There's information on our faculty and the types of projects they work on, and also in the site opportunities. So I know people were curious about mentors and how they learn more about the faculty. So exploring the website is a great way to learn a bit more. So I just want to say thank you to Mary and Ira for all that information and for your time today, and to thank everyone who joined this session. We had people from over 40 countries registering, which just is really exciting, because that's what the program is all about. It's about different people from different disciplines and different countries working together and learning from each other. So thanks very much for your time. We'll put this recording on our website. I'll also be in touch after the event to share it with you if you want to revisit it or anything. And please do get in touch if you have any questions. And bear in mind the September 19th deadline and the letters in at the same time as well. So thank you so much for joining, and wishing you all the best on your career journey. And hopefully we will see some of you in Dublin next year. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks all.